Hey, good morning, Year 10. So, this lesson I just want to focus a bit more on different textures that we find in this piece. Last week we spoke about how it is a fugue, which creates a polyphonic texture. A fugue meaning it has this subject that is imitated throughout in different parts, creating that polyphonic texture. But Bach does make the piece interesting by changing the texture in some places. Imagine if it was just polyphonic texture all the way through and there were no changes, it would probably get a little bit boring. So he does change the texture to make it a bit more interesting. So we're going to have a look at these ones today. Of course, like normal, please pause and take as much time as you need to copy anything onto your score or go back and have a listen again. So monophonic, homophonic, stretto-dialoguing, and canon. Some of these words we know, and some of them are brand new. So, first, monophonic. We know that one sound that we hear, and this is just heard right at the start. And believe me, it's come up as an exam question before, where they play a little clip of the very beginning and it asks what is the texture at the start. And the answer is monophonic, because as you can see, the violin's playing on his own for 2 bars. So that is monophonic, one sound. Have a little listen. Next, I'm just recapping polyphonic. We know what that means. It means many sounds, where you've got different parts playing different melodies on top of each other. And when these, and this is a new word, and when these melodies sound nice together, so for instance, the flute is playing one melody or part of the subject, and the violin is playing something else, and they sound nice together, they work in harmony. It's called counterpoint. You may have heard the term counter melody. So if I write a melody and I want to write another one on top in harmony, but it's slightly different rhythms, it would be a counter melody. Okay, and this creates that polyphonic texture. Okay, have a little listen. Okay, so most Baroque music, a feature of Baroque is polyphonic texture, but Bach does like to have got this section in this piece, which is quite homophonic, or I would probably say more melody and accompaniment. Now, melody, accompaniment, and homophonic are very similar. Homophonic means everything's moving together, so often quite chordal. But melody and accompaniment, you've got a chordal accompaniment with a melody on top. And normally, unless it's a multiple choice answer where it gives you ones to select, if you put homophonic when it's melody accompaniment, then they will give you that mark. So we can see here, let's look at the accompaniment. So I'll just use my mouse so you can see the harpsichord, the ripieno strings, the basso continuo basically, sorry, not the ripieno strings. So the basso continuo is playing these chords. Well, the harpsichord's playing chords, the cellos can't play chords. The cellos are playing like the counter subject idea that we learnt of last week, the quaver idea, just going up in steps. But those notes above what the harpsichord is playing is creating a chord. Okay, so the accompaniment here is very chordal. And here the harpsichord is on full basso continuo mode. We know that the harpsichord does also have some solo parts, but in this section he is fully got his basso continuo hat on. So they're playing those chords, whereas on the top we see the flute and the violin. They are playing in unison, playing a melody in unison, which does emphasise this kind of melody and accompaniment or homophonic feel, because they're playing a melody and these guys are playing chords. However, it's not truly all homophonic, because as you can see, the piano strings are doing some counterpoint, some different melodies underneath. Okay, but it does have a different feel to the other sections in the piece where it is purely polyphonic. We've got the melody in unison and we've got this chordal accompaniment. Okay, so have a little listen. Next feature of texture is something called stretto. Now, stretto is where the imitation of the subject comes in closer succession than before. If we just read this text on the side, so in a fugue, as we see at the beginning, normally one part does not begin playing the subject until the first instrument has completed it. Okay, so the flute doesn't come in with the subject until the violin has finished it. Okay, or the flute doesn't come in with the answer, till the violin has finished it. However, stretto is where the next instrument begins the subject before the other one has finished. So they're overlapping each other, kind of interrupting each other. So you can see this happens in the accompaniment instruments, in the piano strings and bass continuo. Starts the subject, he starts the subject just before he's finished. And then the cello and then the harpsichord. So they all start the subject before the instrument above them has a chance to finish it. So they're overlapping each other, and this is called stretto. Have a listen. Next, and we have a few examples of this. Happens a lot in this piece. It's called dialoguing. So where it's a conversation between parts. And you may recognise the word dialogue from drama, perhaps, or duologue, really, where two people are talking. So the first part of dialoguing that I found in the score, bar 58, is the harpsichord's left and right hand. You can see they're kind of talking to each other. Okay, so one part plays, another part plays. One part plays, another part plays. Okay, there's our first example. Have a listen. Next example of dialoguing is at bar 106. This one's a really nice and obvious one, and it's basically the harpsichord is in its solo role. Harpsichord's got his solo hat on, and the rest of the orchestra are kind of playing against him. So we have the harpsichord playing one bit, and then mainly the soloist and piano strings answering. It's kind of like a question and answer thing as dialoguing. Okay, so the harpsichord solos, not solos, orchestra, harpsichord, orchestra. Okay, so it's one to the other, like a conversation. And this creates, is a new word here, creates an antiphonal effect. Now, antiphonal effect, I think we came across in Queen. Shout at me if we didn't do it, but at the end where the sound is being passed across different groups. So in this case, the harpsichord has a sound, and then it goes to the rest of the orchestra. Then the harpsichord has a sound. So if you were sat in concert hall watching it, then the sound would be passed across different groups. Have a look in have a listen to this one first of all. Now, have a look at through your score, and can you see any more examples of dialoguing before I skip on? They are quite easy to spot because you've got these gaps. So just pause the video, have a little look through, see if you can spot any more, and then play the video and I will show you the ones I have found. Okay, here's some more dialogue in bar 155. Did you find this one? Again, it's the harpsichord and his solo role, got his solo hat on. So the harpsichord plays, and then the rest of the orchestra plays. And what they're playing is not any new kind of material. Bach is hinting at the subject here. We're playing the subject because we know he likes to use it all throughout the piece in different ways. Okay, and that actually continues over your next page, that bit of dialoguing there. Have a listen. Here's some more. And again, helps to emphasise the harpsichord as a soloist. We've got tiny little hints of the subject, not the full subject. Again, Bach always keeping the subject in our heads. Have a listen. Okay, final example of different texture in this piece is canon. And a canon is where parts copy each other exactly. So think back when you in primary sang "Row, row, row your boat." One person would start, another person would start a little bit after, another person would start a little bit after, and you'd be singing exactly the same thing. Or London's Burning is often done.
London's burning, London's burning, fetch the engines, fetch the engines, fetch the engines, fetch the engines, fire, 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 pour on water, pour on water, fetch the engines, fetch the engines, fetch the engines, fetch the engines, fire, 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 pour on
if we were in class, we would do a whole class little canon of London's Burning, but we're not. So in the harpsichord solo, this happens. Now the harpsichord solo is basically the right hand starts the tune that he's going to play, and then the left hand copies the right hand exactly, note for note, a few beats after, and just an octave lower. So only 8 notes lower. As you see, the left hand harpsichord, I mean, this is so tricky to play. Your two hands are playing completely different things. The left hand harpsichord used to reading bass clef, now needs to read treble clef, so he is up higher slightly on the keyboard. He does go quite high. And actually what happens here, it goes back to bass clef. Okay, so he has to switch to bass clef. So basically, canon is where one part copies exactly another part a little bit after. Have a listen.